All right, we're going to go over the top 10 movies that Burt Reynolds was either considering being in and was offered the role, but he turned down, or he was heavily considered for. As we all know, he passed away in his home in Jupiter, Florida, and his family didn't expect him, to pass away. He had cardiac arrest, and I think he had heart issues the last several years. He was born in Michigan, spent a little bit of time in Georgia, but for the most part, he was a Floridian most of his childhood. He played football in high school, was a great football player. Some even considered that he could play professional. Played for Florida State. He got injured. He went into acting and eventually moved up to New York, where he acted some, and then to Hollywood. And the rest is history. He's one of my favorite actors. I love Burt Reynolds. I love Deliverance. I love Smokey and the Bandit. Boogie Nights. I loved him in Cannonball Run. I used to watch that all the time when I was a kid on HBO. I'd replay it. I'd even watch the sequels. So I was a huge Cannonball Run fan. So let's go over the top 10 movies that he either turned down or he was heavily considered for. Number 10 is Rocky, character of Rocky Balboa, who of course that's Sylvester Stallone's baby. He wrote the movie, and he was going to do it hell or high water. He was going to be in this movie. He didn't care what it took. We all know he was an unknown. Of course, the movie production company, they wanted somebody big to play it. They considered Robert Redford, Ryan O'Neal, and you're going to hear those names come up a couple of times in these choices. But Sylvester Stallone's like, man, I'll do it for free, whatever it takes. They offered Stallone like $1 million, and at the time Stallone was broke, and he's like, no, I'll do whatever. I think he ended up selling his dog Buckus in order to do it. Eventually they gave in, and the rest is history. So this was number 10. Number 9 was John McClane, Bruce Willis's character in the movie Die Hard. We know that this made Bruce Willis into a huge movie star. I think he was in a TV show called Moonstruck or something like that before Die Hard. Burt Reynolds said he turned it down, and he was offered this part. And Reynolds said he turned it down just because he just didn't have any interest in it. And later he says, I don't have any regrets turning anything down that Bruce Willis was in. So yeah, the rest is history when it comes to Bruce Willis. I think Reynolds would have done an awesome job with this series, even better than Bruce Willis. I think Bruce Willis is limited in his acting range. I don't think he's that talented. However, he did knock it out of the park with Sixth Sense. Awesome movie. I wish he had stopped making movies after that. The world would be a much better place. So that's number 9. Number 8, and this is a shocker. He was heavily considered for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, playing the character's name is Randall McMurphy, who we all know famously was played by Jack Nicholson, who just knocked it out of the park. Great actor. And you'll see Nicholson's name come up in this top 10 as well. This was originally a novel written in 1962 and made into a screenplay that was played by Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas, who actually turned 101 years old this year, played the screenplay and wanted to bring it to theaters in the 60s. It just never did come into being. Eventually, I think Michael Douglas bought the rights to it, to the movie rights, and of course was a producer. And Kirk Douglas in the 70s wanted to play it, but Michael's like, Dad, you're just too old to play this character. And I think there was actually tension and a little bit of anger between the two, which of course they eventually reconciled. But yeah, that's an interesting note. This role was heavily considered to be played by Gene Hackman. They wanted Gene Hackman, and who would have been awesome with it. Burt Reynolds was originally offered the part, and Marlon Brando, they were considering for this part. But I was shocked to find out that they were originally wanting Burt Reynolds, And the reason I'm shocked is I no offense to Burt, but I just don't think he has the acting chops, or had the acting chops in the range as someone like Nicholson. Nicholson is a genius. He's brilliant when it comes to acting. And I'm not saying that Reynolds is not a good actor, but for this kind of acting range and talent to really knock this out of the park, Nicholson was a home run. And so Reynolds' reason for turning it down, he's like, I remember really, really wanting it. He's like, I just don't remember why I turned it down. Maybe there was a Smokey and the Bandit sequel coming up, probably, or a third one, who knows. So yeah, he turned down this part. It was a shocker. And then next one is 7 is Pretty Woman. This is another shocker that they would want to play with Julia Roberts. This, of course, this part, successful businessman, was played by Richard Gere, and the reason that Reynolds gave for turning it down, he just said, quote unquote, I'm an idiot for turning it down. I'm glad that Reynolds didn't get this part. I think Richard Gere was the perfect actor to play this part, and I think it needed someone that was like a pretty boy kind of look that Richard Gere has. I think Burt Reynolds, he's an attractive dude, but I think he's more of like the rustic, rigid, tough guy kind of good looks. Sort of like Mel Gibson or Russell Crowe. He's not like Richard Gere. So this was another one that I think the world's a better place that Burt Reynolds didn't play. Number 6, this was a shocker. This is the second movie that Jack Nicholson eventually played, Terms of Endearment. This is a 1982 movie, drama about a relationship between a mother and a daughter who had terminal cancer. Shirley MacLaine, I think she won an Oscar in this movie, as we can see in the picture. The second Oscar for Jack Nicholson for this role, Best Supporting Actor. And Jack had won 3 overall. I think he won the third one, was As Good as It Gets, which is another great movie. But Jack knocked this one out of the park too. I think he was right for the role. I don't think this movie would have been as good with Burt Reynolds. I don't think Burt Reynolds, as good as actor he is, I just don't think he was right for this part. I don't think he has the range that Nicholson does. So this is another one I'm glad that he wasn't in. Great actors. I mean, Nicholson was in this. Of course, Shirley MacLaine and Deborah Winger, which was just awesome. I think there was like a lot of feuding between MacLaine and Winger in this movie. But side note, if you haven't seen the Netflix show, it's called The Ranch. It's got Sam Elliott in it and Deborah Winger, and Ashton Kutcher's in it. It's been out for a couple years. Great TV show. If you haven't seen it on Netflix, I'd highly recommend you watching this or watching that. All right, so that's number 6. Number 5. This is a shocker. 1969 James Bond. Sean Connery retired from James Bond, and they were looking for a new James Bond. This is another one that Burt Reynolds says that he was kicking himself for not getting. He says, I regret it. He says that I could have done it. I could have done a good job with James Bond. But the reason he turned it down was he's like, I just don't think that the world would accept it, an American playing James Bond, which of course is a Brit. It's a British novel from 1962, I believe. Great series of books. And I think Burt Reynolds' first intuition was correct on this one. I think that you just need a very well-polished leading man to play James Bond, like Sean Connery or Pierce Brosnan. So Burt Reynolds, I think, would have been a horrible choice to play James Bond. But of course, he later regretted it. Okay, here's another shocker. Michael Corleone for the Godfather series that was originally played, who played all 3, Al Pacino, played Michael Corleone. and he was heavily considered. I think Burt Reynolds actually got the part, and eventually Marlon Brando vetoed it. He's like, Marlon said, I think Burt Reynolds is a narcissist, and I do not want him to be in this movie. If he's in this movie, I quit. I'm not going to be in it. So I think Marlon Brando vetoed Burt Reynolds from being in this movie. Of course, we all know it made Al Pacino into the actor he is today. Just think, if we didn't have Godfather, we wouldn't have all the great films that Pacino made, like Scarface, all those great movies. Again, this is another movie I don't think Burt Reynolds really was right for. I think maybe this one more so than like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but Al Pacino was awesome. And side note on this one, the production company didn't want Al Pacino. You know, they wanted, I think, Ryan O'Neal and Robert Redford. We heard those names before to play. They wanted the leading man who's already well known, and they're like, you know, Al Pacino, who is this little character? They thought he was too short. They just didn't like him. But we know the rest is history with that. Al Pacino was awesome with that. Next one, Han Solo with Star Wars, and he was definitely offered this role. I think he was like the first person offered Han Solo, and the reason he turned it down was he's like, first interview that Reynolds had, he's like, I turned it down because I don't like science fiction. And the second interview that Reynolds made about this was that he blamed his agent. I think his agent didn't tell him. So it was one or the other. But this is one of the role, unlike the other ones, that I think Burt Reynolds would have knocked out of the park. I think Burt Reynolds would have been a good Han Solo. One reason is just because it's more of a like a tough kind of guy, rustic kind of character who doesn't have a lot of lines. You know, it's not wise to upset a Wookiee. That's not too complex to say. So I think Reynolds would have done good with this one. I think this is one that he should have definitely taken. Number 2, this was a shocker. Superman. He was heavily considered to do Superman. I think they actually offered him. He turned it down. I think this one he says he wasn't sure why he turned it down. But so many people wanted this role. Stallone wanted this role. Schwarzenegger wanted this role. Nick Nolte wanted this role. Actually, Bruce Jenner, the runner, wanted this role. Christopher Walken wanted this role. But, of course, we all know it went to Christopher Reeves, who I think was the perfect pick for it. An unknown at the time, for the most part. And I think Reeves worked out daily in order to get the physique to play Superman. But I thought this was a good role for Reeves. I think Burt Reynolds could have pulled this one off as well. So I think he made a mistake turning this down. And number 1, last but not least, this is a shocker. Boogie Nights. Now, why do I say Boogie Nights when Reynolds was actually in this movie? That's because he turned this movie down 7 times before he said yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And he says the reason I kept turning it down, he's like, this is just not my kind of movie, and I can't see myself playing an adult actor, film director. And so that was the reason he turned it down 7 times. And he told Conan O'Brien, he's like, I've never seen the movie, because Conan asked, hey, have you seen this movie before? This movie jump-started his career again. I think he just came off the TV show called Evening Shades. I remember that. I forgot about that show until I was doing some research on this. He did a TV show called Evening Shades, and I think his career was pretty much on the downslope. And this movie really propped him up. Sort of reminds me of Pulp Fiction for Travolta, because Travolta was also didn't do anything in the 80s, and then same thing with Reynolds. I think that this movie really showed his acting talent I thought he did a great job with this movie. So turning it down 7 times, I'm glad he finally said yes. You know, this is a gem that we can enjoy for years. Honorable to mention some movies that he's turned down. He turned down Eddie Valiant for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He turned down the lead role for Flashdance. He turned down Tom Cruise's character, you know, like the motivational speaker in Magnolia. He turned down Rosemary's Baby, Soap Dish from, you know, Kevin Kline did that one. Alan Balzer from Splash character, the main character I think for West Side Story. Beneath the Planet of the Apes. He was actually offered Trapper for MASH, the TV show. He turned that down. And Jack Cates, the character of Jack Cates, played by Nick Nolte in 48 Hours. So yeah, he turned out a lot of movies. I don't think he made the best choices in his movie career, but he did have some home runs. Smokey and the Bandit will live for infamy. And I think, you know, he had a lot of help with Sally Fields, who's an awesome actress. Great movie. Deliverance, he knocked it out. Cannonball Run. And there's so many that he did. And I'm definitely going to miss Burt Reynolds. And so rest in peace wherever you are. Thanks for watching these videos. Please subscribe. I'll do these every week. And see you on the next one.